Today we're going to start Unit 5, Lesson 1, which is a continuation of what we started at the end of Unit 4, and that's writing linear equations. Before, I was able to give you a slope and a y-intercept, and you could just plug it into the correct place in the slope-intercept form of a line. But today, all I'm going to give you is a slope and then an ordered pair to go with it. And you will have to write the equation of the line in slope-intercept form that goes through the point and has that slope. All right, so let's talk about how we're going to do that in two different ways. The first method is going to be the graphing method. If the points are small enough that you can graph them on the graph paper that's provided to you, you can try it the graphing method. Some of you might even find it easier just doing the algebraic method. It doesn't matter how small or large your points are with the algebraic method, it'll always work for you. Okay, but I'm going to start with the graphing method first. And our step number 1 will be to plot the given point. Our second step will be to use the provided slope that they give you to find your y-intercept. And your last step will be to use that slope and that y-intercept to write the equation of the line. All right, so let's go get started on example number 1 and we can see what this looks like. All right, so example number 1, they give me the slope right there, m equals 2. And my job will be to use that slope in just a minute, okay? The very first step is to plot this point, so I'm going to plot it down below. All right, so I have plotted that point, and now I'm going to use my slope. I do want to remind you that you need to put your slope over 1 if it's a whole number, okay? And so what I'm going to do starting at that point is I'm going to rise 2, run 1, and put a point. Rise 2 more, run 1 more, and put a point. But I want you to notice that when I do that, it's taking me further and further away from the y-axis, and in order to find the y-intercept, I need for this line to cross the y-axis. So I need for you to remember that your slope can also do the exact opposite in both directions. Instead of going up and right, it can go down and left, and that'll bring us towards the y-intercept. So I'm going to go back to the original point, 4, 1, and I'm going to go down 2 and then back 1. And then I'll put a point there. And then I'm going to do it again. Down 2, back 1, down 2, left, down 2, left. And once I do that enough times to where I cross the y-axis, that is going to be my B. The B in this case is down on the y-axis 7 spaces, so it's a -7. All right, my last step is to write the equation. So I'm going to take the M, and I'm going to take the B, and I'm going to put them together in my slope-intercept form, which, if you remember, is y equals mx plus b. So let's go ahead and plug them in. And so my final answer for problem number 1 is y equals 2x minus 7. All right, so I've really just used what I already know about plotting points, using slope to plot more points, and then understanding that the y-intercept is where we cross the y-axis. And then I pull the slope and the y-intercept together like I've done before to write the equation of my line. Why don't you go ahead and practice number 2? Pause the video and give it a try. All right, so for example number 2, I've gone ahead and put that box around the point that I need to plot, and now I'm ready to plot it. So +2, up 1, 2, 3, 4, and there's my ordered pair. Trying to get it more accurate. That's better. Okay, and now I'm going to switch over to my slope, and my slope is either up 1, it's up 1 over 2, but again, just like before, that's taking me away from the y-axis, so I'm going to use this slope, the -1 over the -2, so go down 1, back 2, and then what I just found right there, real quick and easy, was my y-intercept is at +3. Okay, so now I'm going to use my slope and my y-intercept. So I'm going to use the original slope and this y-intercept, and I'm going to plug it in. And that is the equation of my line. Hopefully these are feeling pretty easy for you. Why don't you go ahead and try examples 3 and 4 on your own. Pause the video until you're completely finished with examples 3 and 4, and then come back and check your work with mine. All right, so I've completed my example number 3. Again, I plotted my point. I used my original slope up to right 3 because that was leading me in the correct direction to get to the y-axis. As soon as I got to the y-axis, I stopped. I circled that point and I said, okay, I am crossing the y-axis at +4. And so then I used the slope and I used the y-intercept and I wrote my equation. All right, I've completed example number 4, and I do just want to remind you that when you are given a slope -3/4, notice that that negative sign is directly in the middle of the fraction, and so I needed to choose to put it on the top or the bottom. I put it on the top because that would allow me to go down 3, right 4, and I needed to go right in order to get to my y-intercept. Okay? Hopefully these 4 examples are enough. You're going to get some more practice with your classwork. What I want us to do next is move over to the algebraic method and talk about, for one, why do we even need to know this? All right, so we need to know how to do this algebraically. For one, it's going to help you in your future math courses. You won't always be able to do things the graphing method in the future. As well as now, sometimes now your ordered pairs are going to be too large to plot the points on the graph paper that's given to you. So if you look at example number 9 on your paper, one of the ordered pairs there is -12, 30. And that would take a little while to figure out how to plot that large point on a small piece of graph paper, okay? All right, so next, let's talk about what the steps are going to be for that. First, you will need to take the m, the slope that they give you, as well as the x and y values out of the ordered pair that they give you, and plug those 3 numbers into y equals mx plus b. Next, you will solve for b, which is your y-intercept. And then last, just like before, you will use the slope and you will use the y-intercept to plug them into the slope-intercept form again. Okay, y equals mx plus b, plug them in again, and this time you'll be left with the y equals and then you're just filling in the M and the B, and that will be your final answer. Okay? So let's go take a look at example number 1. All right, so looking at example 5, I have already identified the x and y value from my ordered pair, as well as the slope using the letter M. What I'm going to do now is go on to the second part of step 1, which is to plug all of those values into the slope-intercept form. Okay, so my y value is -3, my x value is +4, my m is -1, I bring down the equal and I bring down the plus b. The b is what I'm solving for. All right, so let's start by simplifying, and this is just an easy equation to solve now. -1 times 4 is -4. Okay, and then to isolate the b, I will need to add 4 to both sides to move it to the left. And so now what I have is b equals +1, and those 4's simplified to equal 0. And so now I know that the b is 1. So that was solving it was step 2. So now I know what the b is. My last step is to use m and b, just the m and just the b, and plug them into the correct places. So m, or -1, will go in here. B, or +1, will go in right there. All right, and so I have plugged them into the correct places, and that is the equation of the line that has a slope of -1 and passes through the point 4, -3. All right, let's look at example 6 together. So I always start out by identifying the ordered pair. My x value is -12, x comes first. My y value is -5, that comes second. And my slope, m, is +1/3. So what I'm going to do is plug them in to, now that I have plugged them both in, I need to simplify. Now, this situation, I have a slope that is a fraction. So in order to multiply these two numbers, I want to put the integer over 1 so that I can multiply straight across. So I will do 1 times -12, and then I will multiply 3 times 1. And -12 divided by 3 reduces to equal -4. I'm going to bring down my b and bring down my -5. And finally, I'm just going to solve this simple one-step equation. Let's move the 4 away from the variable using the inverse operation. Those cancel, and I now know that b equals -1. That is my y-intercept. That is what I needed to find. And so the last step is to plug it in to here. So my m, 1/3, will go there. My b, which is my y-intercept, will go right there where the b is. And so my final solution to example 6 is y equals 1/3 x minus 1. What I'd like for you to do now is to go over and look, or on your paper it would be go down, to examples 7 and 8. I want you to, again, remember to start by identifying your x and y value, and your slope, which is 5 in this case. Plug them in to your slope-intercept equation and solve for b. And check back in with me in just a minute when you've had an opportunity to solve all the way down and tell me what b equals. All right, here's my solution for example number 7. Notice that this ordered pair, 6, 24, might not fit on every graph paper that you're given. Maybe if it's a whole sheet it could, but if it's just one of the little graphs it wouldn't. So just keep in mind that it is important to be able to do this method for those times when you cannot plot your ordered pairs, okay? All right, go ahead now and start example number 8, and I am identifying my x and y values as well as my slope, all right? And plug those in and let's see if you can solve for b. So I have officially completed step number 1 by plugging in the m, x, and y. Now go ahead and complete step 3, which is to solve for the b. And here is my solution for b. I got the y-intercept is 9. And now let's plug that in to get our final answer, my m and my b. And my solution is y equals 1/2 x plus 9. All right, let's go do example number 9 together. Example number 9, we're going to identify our x and our y and our slope of 0. Okay, so 30 equals 0 times negative 12 plus our b. All right, 0 times negative 12 is just 0, which means that that completely cancels out. And so I have 30 equals b. And so I'm going to fill that in to my equation just like normal. And then I do want to simplify this. 0x, you don't want to leave that in your final answer. So my equation will simply look like y equals 30. And if I graphed this, it would be a horizontal line. All right? And then let's look at our very last example for today, which is number 10, x and y, m equals negative 1 over 4. I'm going to plug these in. When I reduce these, I get negative 1 times negative 4 is positive, over 4 times 1, which is also positive. And so that's going to reduce to 1 plus b. Let me bring this down. And continue to solve by subtracting 1 from both sides. And so I get 1 minus 1 is 0. And a lot of students struggle when you get the answer 0. They think that they've done something wrong. But you can have a y-intercept that is at 0. Okay, so let's plug this in and see what this is going to look like. All right, so if I have a y-intercept that equals 0, it would plug in and look like this. And then again, just like before, I want to simplify this. I don't want to leave the plus 0 on the end. So my final answer will look like y equals negative 1/4 x with no y-intercept. Or it is there, but it's 0, so I don't need to include it in the final written equation. All right, the one last thing that I do want to add here is another reason that we might sometimes need to know the algebraic method. Let's take a look. All right, so here's my example, and I'm going to try the graphing method first All right, I'm going to begin by plotting the point 3, 3, which is right here. And then I'm going to use my slope to identify more points on the graph. So my slope is rise 1, run 2. And if I continue going this direction, I'm going to move further from the y-intercept. So what I actually want to do is use the -1 over -2 to move closer to the y-intercept. So starting at that point again, 3, 3, I'm going to go down 1, back 2. And then do it again, down 1, back 2. And then I'm going to connect these points. All right, I have connected my points, and I do see that this line crosses the y-axis. All right, so I was able to identify my y-intercept using the graphing method. However, it falls between the numbers 1 and 2. It kind of looks like it might be a half, but there's no way for me to know that exactly for sure until I do the algebraic method. So we're now going to also do the algebraic method for this same example. All right, so my point was 3, 3, and my slope was 1/2. Let's go ahead and identify our x value and our y value and our slope and plug all of those into the slope-intercept form. All right, if I multiply straight across here, I'm going to get 3/2, which is the same as 1.5. So let me continue my work over here. So if I have 3 equals 1.5 plus b, let's subtract that 1.5 from both sides. And so now that I have finished solving for the b, I can definitely see for sure that my y-intercept is 1.5. So now I can plug in my slope and my y-intercept to get the final equation of this graph. All right, and so there's my final equation. Y equals 1/2 x plus 3/2. You could have put in there 1.5, but I just converted it back to a fraction. So you will sometimes get y-intercepts that are not whole numbers or not integers, and so we do have to also have the algebraic method in our back pocket to be able to get the exact values of our y-intercept. All right, there is a classwork assignment posted for you on Google Classroom that I'd like for you to complete, and it will be due at the conclusion of class time.